Welcome, viewers. A lot of businesses have the question, how should we talk to our employees about the questions of race and social justice that are currently confronting this country? Employees are talking about it. What should the employers do to add to the conversation and to provide comfort to, if you will, to their employees? Hi, I'm Alan Thayer, Oregon business lawyer. This question came up very organically during a webinar where I was fortunate to be a panelist. And on that panel with me was Sourie Robinson, who was a lawyer for a national retailer and is the CEO and president, and I want to get this right, of the Michigan Minority Supplier Development Council.
Excellent. You got it right.
So Michelle, welcome. Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Businesses do have questions. Business people have questions. I think for the most part, business people want to do the right thing. And their employees have been through a lot with the pandemic. And now there is our new issues that are being discussed, and rightfully so, and probably long overdue. But even though they're long overdue, business people aren't prepared for this conversation. So I'd like to get right into the conversation, if you don't mind. How should business people talk to their employees about race in the current social unrest?
Absolutely. Well, I first like to say that there is no race that is a monolithic group. So when I speak, I'm really speaking from my opinion and experience and what I have seen work for businesses. There are many people that will have differing opinions. And it's one of the reasons I often say to people, if you have close friends, confidants, colleagues that you've built a rapport with, this is typically not a subject to start a conversation with unless there's a foundational rapport. Find people in different parts of the spectrum of thought, those people that are more conservative, more liberal in their thinking, and bring the two of those together as you do your research and inform. It is critical for employers, however, to talk to their employees about this. If you have employees within your organization that are looking to you for that guidance and that leadership, my advice is very simple. People want to know that you care. They don't have to know that you understand every element of it and have experienced things the way that they have experienced them, but they want to know that as their leader, as their boss, that you understand, you care, and you are ready to listen and then act. In fact, I was sharing with Alan that the very reason that I'm participating in this call, I typically would not do that, was because his candor and his honesty to say, I want to know how to talk about this and make a difference. And most people will respond quite positively if you approach them in that manner, whether it's a colleague on a panel with you or it's an employee. When you say to your employees, this is important to me. When we talk about Black Lives Matter, we're not talking about the movement. We're saying Black people's lives matter. So whether you agree with the movement or it's aligned with your political ideology does not matter. So to employers, I simply say, don't talk about cliches, all lives matter versus blue lives matter. Get into big debates. Try to quote what you heard on the news. I think what's important for people to hear and understand is that as their owner, as their employer, as their supervisor, you care. And for any person in this country who claims to love this country, none of us want anyone to feel marginalized in the country. So whether we understand it or not becomes secondary. What's most important is we have the power to listen, the power to make sure everyone believes that they have been heard, and then the power to take action based on what we've learned.
Michelle, that was fabulous, and I think everyone could see why I invited Michelle to join us, and am so pleased that she did. So when you and I have talked, I've heard you make reference to the different experiences that people have and how we can talk to others even though our
Mhm.
experiences may not be the same as theirs. I've had friends tell me about some of the differences, some of their experiences, which are very different than mine. And I was wondering if you could address what are examples of some of the differences that people of color have experienced that maybe I have not.
Right, right. I think this is such a good question because um, rooted in this, I have to say, one of the most positive things that for me has come from this period of peaceful protest and raising awareness have been the number of my colleagues and some of them pretty close friends who are non people of color who have come to me and said, I did not realize, I've heard you talk about specific things before, but now it's really dawning on me. And as I've shared with you, Alan, one of the things I'm most impressed about with this amazing generation of peaceful protesters out there are it's the diversity of the group, the advocacy from people of all walks of life, simply saying none of us will ever achieve all that we can if everyone isn't fully included. And when you think about the experiences, there's a debate on whether or not there really is systemic racism. And there are a lot of good resources out there. And I say read them all, pros and cons. The reality is, at the end of the day, as a person of color, I can certainly share my experience. Even as a woman of color, I have been pulled over and harassed. In instances by law enforcement. Does that mean that I think all law enforcement is bad? Absolutely not. But I also fully recognize, that there are biases. And if you look at statistics, those biases are there. Here's where I do offer some advice. Certainly talk to people, as I said before, conservative friends, more liberal friends who are people of color, and pull all of that together. Do some reading. There are great materials out there. And even, in our technological age, if you don't have time to read, there are excellent videos by lecturers, again, conservative, liberal, and somewhere in between, in that centrist point of view is typically the best place to be. But what I'll say to you is my number one thing is don't discount what you're hearing. One of the quickest ways to silence a person of color and have them believe that your request for them to share their experience isn't genuine is when it's immediately met with, but what about, but this, but that. Um, there is no such thing as systemic racism. What does that really mean? My educational experience, the neighborhood that I grew up in, and how that neighborhood received tax dollars, and the fact that you didn't have the same level of home ownership in many of those minority communities. All of those things kind of have a snowball effect, and the experience can be very different. I will tell you, and I've been very blessed with an excellent education, a single parent mother who taught me that education and my faith could get me anywhere. And I followed those basic credos for my life. But at the end of the day, I recognize every single day when someone looks at me differently. I know the sting of racism daily, and that part I think has probably been most revealing to those who are closest to me.
Michelle, this has been very helpful. I know that you have another commitment. Do you have time for another question?
I do. I do.
Um, Social justice. We hear that word a lot lately. What is social justice?
Social justice is simply saying that we want a just and fair and equitable society for all. And social issues, whether they be those based on race or any other kind of socioeconomic factor, we want to ensure that all people are properly included, and that means we must advocate for them. I personally believe in many conversations, particularly about race, some of the most powerful advocates can be white males who get it. White males that say, I've listened, I've learned, and I've seen it from a different perspective, and that perhaps I didn't fully understand before. You can get the attention of people in the room in a far greater way than the average person of color, because it appears that we're simply lobbying or advocating for ourselves. So I would say leverage your voice to speak up for those who need you to speak up for them.
Michelle, this has been fabulous. Thank you. And I think a lot of small business owners are going to be thanking you as well. Thank you, everyone.
My pleasure. Thank you, Alan.